let's wind up this discussion by looking at a new feature called Dynamic Direct Path I/O. Now, in order to understand Dynamic Direct Path I/O, we need to understand Direct Path I/O in general. Direct Path I/O has been around for a long time. And what it does is it improves the performance of virtual machines and applications that rely on specific physical hardware to be there, to be present in your ESXi hosts. So imagine you've got an application that relies on some sort of custom PCI device, or you've got an application that's relying on GPU. You've got an NVIDIA GPU in an ESXi host. Direct Path I/O will allow you to bind the VM to the PCI device and then bypass the hypervisor level, giving the virtual machine direct access to that PCI device. That's a great feature and can really improve performance of applications that rely on those devices. But you can imagine doing so comes with a bunch of caveats. Because if other hosts don't have that device, then you wouldn't be able to run that VM anywhere except the host that it's currently powered on. You wouldn't be able to do vMotion. You wouldn't be able to support HA. It effectively locks the virtual machine to that particular host. Well, Dynamic Direct Path I/O improves this feature by locking a VM not to a specific PCI device, but a pool of PCI devices that exist across the hosts in a cluster. Very, very nice. Now, rather than pointing to a PCI device, as you point to the pool and their devices across the cluster, we can enable things like HA and vMotion. So this is Dynamic Direct Path I/O, and it was introduced in vSphere 7, and it supports both Direct Path I/O PCI devices as well as NVIDIA GPU devices, okay? And it does a very, very nice job. Now, what we will do in terms of DRS with these devices is allow power on recommendations, choosing any of the hosts that have a device in the pool, but we won't do vMotion. And we're going to avoid vMotion automatically because vMotion with Direct Path I/O devices adds a little bit of overhead to vMotion, and there can be brief interruptions or performance losses in the VMs. That doesn't mean that vMotion is not supported. It simply means that DRS isn't going to be doing it. If it needs to balance out load, it'll move other VMs instead. The way that we're going to do this is by adding a pooled Dynamic Direct Path I/O device to your virtual machine. When you edit the settings of the VM and you select New PCI Device, rather than selecting Direct Path I/O like you would have in the past, you select Dynamic Direct Path I/O. And then you get a list of pools of PCI devices. In this case, there are two pools of PCI devices that you have to choose from. We have Intel virtual gigabit Ethernet adapters and VMware VMX-Net 3 adapters in this example. The only reason you would have a VMX-Net 3 PCI device is if your ESXi host itself was a virtual machine. At any rate, it will actually then allow you to choose which pool you want to attach this new PCI device to. So it's a really, really cool feature. Well, that does it for our discussion on DRS. And we've got a great lab number 25 coming up here that says, first thing we're going to do is we're going to create the cluster, enable it for DRS. We're going to play with some of those DRS settings. Then we're going to add some hosts to our cluster. We're going to make sure that vMotion is working on all the hosts first, okay? So because DRS is really no fun without vMotion. Then we're going to use that CPU busy tool to create a load imbalance across the cluster and watch as DRS attempts to or recommends that we migrate virtual machines to other hosts. Okay, so that's a really cool lab. And I hope you enjoy it. That does it for our discussion of DRS, where we learned all kinds of great stuff about DRS. The takeaway, enable it if you've got license for it. It does require the enterprise license. Put it in fully automated mode, because if you don't, you'll get really tired of accepting all the recommendations. Okay? Create the affinity rules if you need them, and away you go, right? And DRS is really smart about how it powers on and moves virtual machines around. I hope you've enjoyed this particular lesson. When we come back, we'll begin our discussion on vSphere HA. Talk to you very soon. Thanks.